welcome back to Granny's Crochet Shop for our next step in learning how to crochet. It's important next that we learn how to hold the hook. The hook can be held in two different ways. Some people like to hold it like a pencil, and they say this is easier on your hands over time. I was taught by my grandma to hold it in what's called the knife hold, and this is how I prefer to hold my hook. Whatever works for you, one or the other of these holds is what the right hand is going to be doing. Now the left hand, before we decide what to do with the left hand, we are going to make a quick slip knot on our hook, but I do want to point something else out to you. Many beginning crocheters don't notice this, but when we have our skein of yarn or ball of yarn, there is always an end which is automatically meant to supply our yarn. Okay, sometimes people unwind everything from the wrong end, and there's no need to do that. As long as everything's functioning correctly within that ball of yarn when it was prepared at the manufacturer, there should be one end in which makes it easier for us to work. All right, so I'm just going to make a quick slip knot here the way I instructed you in the last tutorial and get that on my hook there. All right, so now I have a nice loop on my hook with the slip knot. With the working end, now we need to be able to wrap this correctly around our hand. So the first thing we're going to do with the working end of the yarn is lay it across the pinky of our left hand as such. And then we're going to wrap it around. One full wrap. Notice how the yarn on the bottom left is moving freely as I pull up the yarn to my index finger on the left hand and bring it back behind. That is all that's necessary. Now what? Now what do we do? Well, notice your middle finger and your thumb have nothing to do and they're just sort of flopping around. They are responsible for holding your project in place. And right now, all our project is a slip knot with the tail hanging down. Many beginners forget to use the thumb and the middle finger for this vitally important task of taking care of our project for us while we're crocheting. And another thing, sometimes they'll let this finger go down as the yarn goes down, but we need to keep the yarn flowing through this hand because that's where we're getting our yarn from for our project. It's coming from the skein of yarn through our hand. All right, so now the first thing to do to make a chain stitch is we're going to take and hold our hook the way that we've chosen to hold it, coming from the right hand, and we're going to yarn over with this piece of yarn that's here. Now we don't want to come from behind like that. We want to take our hook and go to the front of the yarn and bring a piece over. Now very gently, and you can wiggle this around. You need to remember to relax when you crochet. It's meant to be a leisure art and relaxing, not something very stiff and dreadful. So we yarn over and we pull that yarn through, and now we have another loop. So now we have two loops, one on our hook and one below it next to the slip knot. And we are holding this original slip knot with our middle and thumb finger on the left hand. All right, let's try it again. Let's take the hook, yarn over. The hook is in the front, don't forget, and we yarn over and pull it through. Well, that chain we've made, there are two chain stitches now on the hook and below the hook, and a loop on the hook. We keep doing this, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through, yarn over one more time and pull it through. Now we have a chain of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches, and notice that my thumb and middle finger are going to move up. They're moving along with this. As thread is moving through my left hand, my left thumb and middle finger are holding my project, and they are free to move up and down. Now something else we want to remember is these chain stitches need to be as even as possible. Some beginners I know let this loop on the hook get too large, and then they end up with very huge chain stitches. They will be much too large to work with our project. So if that happens to you, you might want to pull them out, as horrible as that sounds, because we got to learn sometime how to pull out our stitches, because believe me, I've made my share of mistakes and had to redo. Another thing that beginners do sometimes is pull too tightly. Like they really give it a tug and make it tight. And notice the difference. They're so small, and what's going to happen is later we need to be able to put this hook into these stitches. So if it's too tight, we won't be able to progress to the single or double stitch that we need to do later. So I'm going to pull that out. We want to make sure, just like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, that it's not too big or too small, and it's just right as we make our stitches. All right, so now I've made myself a small chain using the chain stitch. I want to point out to you to notice the little V shapes that we have going on here. I'll use my hook to perhaps point them out better. Right here on the front side, each little chain stitch gives us a V. The other part of the anatomy of the chain stitch we can see by flipping it over. If we flip it over, we'll notice there are some bumps that form on the back side. Sometimes we make our stitches into these back bumps, and other times we make stitches into the V shapes. And we will learn how to do that on upcoming tutorials of the single crochet and double crochet. But right now, just practice making chains. I tell my grandchildren to make as many chains as possible and make them as long as possible. And then we use our creativity and we come up with different things that we can do with those chains of many colors. But the important thing is, as you're making the chain, that we don't want the stitches too large or too small. We want them just right. So happy crocheting, good luck with your chain stitch, and hope to see you soon.